Okay. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so excited to have you here. Today we are going to be talking about the aura color purple and what it means if that is your main aura color, your primary color, the one that takes up the most of your aura field. Now, most people only have, one main color, but typically I see about 3 colors in most people's auras, sometimes more. It depends on the person. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the aura color purple. And with that, we will be discussing a little bit about the color purple, what kind of comes with it, and then we'll be talking about the different shades of purple itself as well and what those different shades mean. And at the very end of this video, we'll be talking about the aura color purple in relationships and in career as well. So make sure that you follow along for the whole entire thing if you're interested in those last 2 topics. Now, lastly, if you end up enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button, turn the bell icon on so that you don't miss when I post new videos. All of the other colors will be coming week by week as we go along here through the magical rainbow. Now, if you haven't seen my video yet on what the aura is and what determines your aura colors, definitely make sure that you watch those 2 videos because those will help give you more information and more background into what the aura actually is. So the purple aura correlates to the crown chakra. And this is a very mystical, very magical center. It connects us in with higher realms of knowing, with spirit, with the divine, and things of that nature. That's also kind of why you see that halo around different figures like Jesus, Mother Mary, and things like that. It's that crown chakra energy that connects us to, again, the ethereal realms. So people who have purple are usually very mystical, very magical, and very, very wise beyond their years. Something I forgot to mention, by the way, is I do have a full course that's very intense if you want to learn how to see auras. It's focused mainly on opening up your third eye, but I also give you some extra pointers in there as well as how to clean out your energetic aura field yourself so that you can keep a nice crispy energy field. So if you're interested in that, the class currently, as I make this video, is closed for enrollment, but it will come open again soon. So check the link down in the description below for that information. If it's still currently closed, then feel free to subscribe to my email list, and that is where I will notify you when the course does open back up again. Back to the video. Because the crown chakra is in the mental headspace and has that ethereal connection, oftentimes people who have purple auras kind of know things without knowing how they know them. It's like they oftentimes will have things where they feel like it's natural, common sense for most people to know how something works, or they may just have really bizarre, random moments where they're like, I don't know how I know that, but I know that. That's very common for people who have a purple aura. Now, depending on the shade of purple that you have, and I'll talk about the shades too here in the next section, depending on the shade that you have, daydreams or sleep dreams tend to be very vivid and very intense. And a lot of that is because of that ability to connect with the higher realms and to perceive things that aren't really in the physical, tangible reality. And so people with purple in their aura field tend to be very unique, very creative, and like I said, connected to this sense of knowing that is a little bit otherworldly. With that being said, deja vu is incredibly common for people who have a purple aura. Alongside with deja vu, very vivid daydreams as well are very common, and occasionally getting like a voice that comes into your head or ringing in your ears. Those things can be very common for people who have purple because they're connected, again, like I said, to this ethereal knowledge source. They also tend to do very well with channeling spirit guides and learning how to do that. That's actually going to be the next course that I'm putting together here. Most likely that will be put together by the beginning of April. So pre-sale will be launching here very soon, and I'm very excited for that. So purple people also are very much into the mystical, the magical, and a lot of that is because they're naturally tapped into that information. People who have purple auras are often under divine inspiration and tap in very easily to the flow of where things are moving and how to kind of get from point A to point B very quickly. They're very powerful manifestors, and some people kind of see it as like they started here and then somehow they just ended up over here, and people are kind of like, how? I never saw them like go from step A over here to step B or whatever, right? I never saw that journey for them, but it just happened all of a sudden. That's very common for people who have purple people who have purple auras. Action taken from a space of ego for people who have purple auras will almost always leave them kind of tripping over themselves, kind of fumbling and having a hard time getting where they want to go with certain things in their life. And this is very pivotal and very important for purple aura people to keep in mind, because they are under divine inspiration and divine direction in their lives. And so if they get too stuck on the tangible, the physical, they tend to really dim their lights, and they can be kind of fatigued because of that. Light purple / pink aura. Individuals with light purple, pink auras, they tend to be very bubbly, very fun, very vivacious. They usually have a very fun personality about them. They have things that they really enjoy doing that bring them a lot of joy, and it's very important for people with pink to take the time to go out with friends and have fun and to experience new things that bring them a lot of playfulness. Pink is very much so like a bubblegum vibes, candy. When we think of people with pink auras, that's kind of some of the things that come in. Now, I see pink auras a lot at Disney World. That's incredibly common. That's not the only place that they show up, of course, but that's a very common place that pink auras do show up. And that's because it's a very like fun, whimsical place to go. And so they tend to really enjoy Disney World, funny enough. Because pink tends to be so bubbly and spontaneous and fun, it's also incredibly important that they take time for self-care, like a regular weekly bubble bath or spa day or shopping trip, things like that. It's incredibly important for people who have pink to revitalize their energy field so that they can continue to be so outgoing and fun and playful like they're used to being. Lilac. So with lilac, they tend to be very mystical, kind of lofty. They're very much so daydreamers. They tend to be creative. They tend to do things in a way that most people would kind of find a little odd. I always think of like paintings of clouds when I think of lilac for whatever reason. It's very much so that kind of free energy that's kind of just moving and could kind of go anywhere any given moment. They very much so are go with the flow. They very much are at peace when they're able to kind of navigate things from a space of being carefree and being kind of mystical. It tends to have some fae energy behind it when we have lilac, not always for everybody, but some people it definitely comes in with that fae energy. With lilac, we think about artists, poets, writers, anything that's methodical and dreamy in nature. These people do really well if they're able to kind of travel and again, kind of just like go wherever the wind takes them. Violet auras. People with violet tend to be very, very mystical, very magical. They're kind of like a little bit more awake out of all of the purples, where they are able to really focus on what it is that they're manifesting and really hone in on where that energy is and kind of to some degree have an action plan about it. But it's different with violet than it is like deep purple. Deep purple is like the dreamy, the mystic, like the gypsy vibe, and violet is more like awake, tangible, there's movement to it, and it's not so daydreamy like lilac is. So it kind of meets in the middle. And as I talk about deep purple, I'm sure you'll kind of have a better understanding of what that middle range is. People with violet, and when I say violet, I mean a very vibrant, bright purple, they tend to be very powerful spiritually, more powerful than they're aware of. They tend to be very good at learning how to channel spirits, especially with that. They are premium. As I'd mentioned earlier, I am designing a spirit guide course, so if you're interested in that, join my mailing list. It'll be linked in the description. But violet, they have a lot of magical powers to them, and if they haven't unboxed those yet, they inevitably will at some point in their life. People with violet also tend to be very beyond the ego. They tend to be more focused on the big picture of things. They tend to be very creative, kind of like lilac is, but a little bit less anywhere the wind blows like lilac is. They tend to be a little bit more like, yeah, but I want this outcome. But they're also not crazy sturdy about it either. They just have a knowing presence about them. Deep purple. So people with deep purple tend to be like the mystic archetype, and when we talk about that, I mean like the gypsy woman with the dark velvet tablecloth and the giant crystal ball. That's kind of the vibe that deep purple gives off. People with deep purple tend to have incredibly vivid dreams. It's very important that they take the time to write their dreams down and to interpret their dreams because of how intense their dreams are. And I do have a dream interpretation video up on this YouTube channel, and I will pop it up on the screen here if you're interested in that video. But people who have deep purple, their dreams are incredibly important to them. When we think of deep purple, I kind of talk to people about it like as if it was a body of water. You're diving deep down to get these pearls of wisdom. Because of that as well, sometimes deep purple, people do really well with divination. So what I'm saying there with divination is like tarot cards, astrology, channeling, talking to spirit guides, using ruins or throwing bones, things of that nature. People with deep purple tend to do very well when they kind of create a systematic way of understanding or reading things for themselves and communing with the universe in that specific format. So learning what that is for you, if your color is deep purple, is incredibly important because it will play a very big role into your spiritual journey. Also, a lot of people who have deep purple kind of find the 3D world incredibly mundane. There can be a little bit of escapism with people who have deep purple, or even a little bit of like such a high awareness of knowing of what other people's energy is around them or what other people's intentions are around them, that they can become kind of introverted and a little bit reclusive. And that's true for the most part when we have darker tones in the aura in general, that it can indicate a little bit more seclusion from being around people. And that's usually because there's some level of internal journeying going on with the darker tones in the aura field. Typically with like deep purple, we see like musicians, artists. We also see energy healers, tarot readers, mystics in general. So they can kind of land wherever they want to. And again, we'll go over career more at the later part of this video. Indigo auras. Indigo auras are rare. And when I say rare, I mean they are very rare. I don't see them that often, honestly. They're up there with rainbow, crystal, and gold, I would say. And gold is a little bit less so. It's more rainbow, crystal, indigo. I would say those are like the really rare ones. So with indigo, it is correlated to the third eye chakra, and this deals very much so with seeing the unseen. So for people who have indigo, they may have seen a lot of spirits when they were kids, especially if this is a color that they've had for a very long time. And typically with indigo, it's a color that you have. It's not like one that you change and move through. That's what's very interesting about indigo, is it tends to be like a staple. And it's very rare that somebody loses indigo, whereas other people's auras do change kind of quickly. So what makes indigo people very unique in that sense is they usually come here from like a specific energy tribe, and they're very ethereal, very unique, the indigo energy people. And so what happens is they incarnate from that specific energetic tribe of indigo energy. It's really fascinating. Whenever I get somebody who's indigo, I'm like, ooh, because I also channel spirits. And so it's always really fun to see the indigo energy come through. So anyway, with indigo people, they typically can see with indigo people, they typically can see spirits. They normally can commune with spirits quite well as well. Sometimes they have really intense visions, which could come in as dreams, or it could come in as daydreams as well, or just like quick, like, visions. Like, have you ever seen That's So Raven? Kind of like that vibe where she just like tunnels out and it's like, it's very similar. So with that being said, they are prone to psychic visions and have a natural psychic vibe to them. They also have their own like spiritual team. And I mean, everybody does, but indigo people have a very unique spiritual team that's available to them. People with indigo auras benefit from meditating regularly. That's like super important for them, because that's the energy that they came from, is this really unique ethereal energy, and connecting back to that is very important for them in order for them to recharge. People who have indigo oftentimes do not feel at home on the earth plane because, well, they're not. They're here though to definitely up level it. And what's interesting about their spirit team is it's very much so like a deep connected tribe of energy. Like, I kind of think about aspen trees, and with aspen trees, it's actually one tree that began the whole thing, and then they're all interconnected with the roots down below, and it's all one organism, basically. And it's kind of similar for people with indigo. It's not exactly like interconnected like the roots. If one dies, they're all gonna die. It's not like that. But they do have this like ability to fill other indigos' energies, but it's very rare that they come into contact with other indigos' energies. It's interesting because there's this very like lonesome contract sort of that they have with coming to the earth plane of like, yeah, I'll be totally different and I'll be fine with it. It's interesting. Black purple aura. So this is like a deep, almost black purple. Whenever we see black in the aura field or brown, it tends to indicate that this person has some old energy that's been stagnant for a while, that's been stuck in this energy space. So black with purple, it kind of can indicate like a cloudy headspace, overthinking, mental exhaustion. It can also indicate upsetting thoughts that they have regularly, depression. Specifically with the crown chakra, when it gets very dark, it can indicate depression, depressing thoughts of, things like that. So if you have a black/purple aura, I would definitely take the time to journal, seek help if you feel like you do need some help, and to work on a new mental structure for yourself. So looking into neuroscience and how we get into our subconscious mind through deep forms of meditation, and how that allows us to reprogram aspects of our conscious mind, and how that's incredibly important if you are feeling depressed, that you kind of take a hold of that. I do think I will create a video here at some point around depression, because this is something I used to have very, very severe depression. And I also used to have really bad anxiety as well. So I will make some videos on that as far as what has helped me. Of course, though, if you are experiencing that, you know, maybe talk to somebody if you want to. You do you. Purple auras in relationships. Let's get into it. Okay, so purple auras in relationships. They are so freaking intuitive that they know what you're thinking. They're aware of it. They're super hyper aware of it. Sorry. My phone interrupted us. They're super hyper aware of it. And they're really so in tune with their other people's thoughts sometimes that it can be very exhausting for them if they don't have a partner that is in a high moral alignment, because people who have purple tend to be very morally sound, and that's because they're in that higher ethereal realm. And by morals, I mean, of course, it's their own moral compass as well of, what they feel is right and wrong. However, there is still, to some degree, moral code that exists as you enter into higher realms of being. So regardless, people who have purple, they tend to want partners who have a higher moral vibe. So that tends to be, and that's not always the case, but it tends to be more of like green and blue tend to be very good matches for people with purple. Now, not always, and like I said, usually there's 3 colors in each person's aura. Around that, 2 is towards the lower side, 3 is average, and then 4 and the 5 gets like really high. So anyway, what I'm getting at though is they tend to match really well with that energy. Green is the heart chakra, which is very loving, and they tend to have an empathic ability of feeling other people's feelings. And that pairs really well with purple's ability to kind of know other people's energy in general. They just tend to know other people's energy. And it can even be like physically how they feel. But they're able to like mentally conceptualize that, if that makes sense. There's a little bit of a difference, not much, but so they pair well. People with blue auras tend to have a high moral compass, and they tend to be kind of angelic in nature. And so those 3 tend to get along really well. However, that's not to say that they don't get along well with any of the other aura colors. Because purple is so incredibly intuitive, but they're also so capable of conceptualizing everybody else's reality, it's very easy for them to kind of get washed out and to get very focused on their partner's energy and how their partner's operating life, and to just fall in love with that no matter what. And so purple aura people can kind of get attached to literally anybody. So it's very important for these people to take relationships slowly and to kind of define for themselves what it is that they're wanting, what it is that they're looking for in a relationship before entering into it. And this is really for purple specifically, and I mean, it's not a bad tip for anybody. We should all have an idea of what we want and enter into it kind of slowly. But for purple in particular, that's very important because they, like I said, can kind of just get attached and then just get stuck. If you have a purple aura, you're very much so meant to find your person in this lifetime, and that connection is supposed to click. It is supposed to click for people who have purple. So if it doesn't feel like a click, it's not the vibe. and you intuitively know what the vibe is. So yeah, that is that for relationships for people with purple auras. Career for people with purple auras. So careers for these people is very hard to pin down because they are so mystical, they are so magical, they can kind of do whatever they want to do. So typically, tarot readers, psychics, spiritual teachers, sometimes teachers, because they have the ability to perceive other people's needs in order to understand things and to learn at the highest ability. Sometimes I see artists, I see poets, writers, musicians. It's a very creative energy, and so it's very hard to be like, that's the job if you have purple, because you're able to conceptualize things at such a high level. However, typically they choose kind of unique careers. Photographers, that's another type of purple aura vibe that I see out there. And as long as they're in alignment with their highest purpose, money isn't really an issue for people with purple. However, for purple auras, it's more about the authenticity of the experience, and of the life that they're living a lot of the time, in the higher realm alignment with that purpose that is really what lights their fire. And so yes, in order to properly take care of themselves, they do have to navigate finances well within their abilities that they naturally have. And that's something that a lot of people with purple auras take a while to learn. Normally they're a little bit self-sacrificing, especially if you have purple and green together, then you can be kind of self-sacrificing. But regardless, as they get later on in their lives, usually I see that they have pretty good finances and pretty good careers. If you ever want to get an aura reading from me, the information for that is down in the description box below. And also sign up for my email list if you are interested in learning more about auras, and also if you want to find out when those courses drop. But that is it from me. Smash that subscribe button, that like button, comment, let me know if this resonated for you. And I love you guys so, so much. Bye.